And our discussion now continues to a much deeper conversation. And remember, today the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula will be making that very important ruling on who has majority members. Is it Kenya Kwanza? Is it the Azimio One Kenya coalition? Well, there has been that debate on who holds a majority, and both feel that they should be given the positions of majority leadership in the National Assembly. And this is what we want to talk about right now. I'll begin with you, Vivian. I mean, when you're looking at this issue of majority, and we earlier touched on why it is important to both the Kenya Kwanza team and the Azimio team. Now, looking at the matter at hand, so you have the Kenya Kwanza, who by essence probably on paper, with regard to the pre-election agreement that was signed, have less members, but then members shifted camp and joined Kenya Kwanza, waiting for that 90-day period for the pre-election agreement so that they can be able to move maybe legally to Azimio One Kenya coalition. But then this will really need Wetangula to put in a lot of work and a lot of into this decision, don't you think?
I actually don't think it takes like Solomonic wisdom.
Really?
I think it's clear cut. Like, just follow the law. Just follow the rule of the law. What does the Political Parties Act say? What does the Article 108 of the Constitution say? What does the political parties regulations stipulate? If you use that to guide you, I mean, it's clear cut, touch and go. No mysterious wisdom required. The Constitution allows, the Political Parties Act allows for formation of a coalition party that can have either individuals as members or political parties as members. And it also allows for either the coalition party to have members of their coalition party or members to be, candidates to be fielded through the constituent parties. So in this case, the main constituent parties in the Azimio coalition are ODM, Wiper Party, and Jubilee. I'd say those are the main ones. There are others, but those are the main ones. And the act basically, which came into life after passing of the Political Parties Amendment Bill earlier in the year, is what allowed for this. Previously, like in 2017, this was not possible. But with the passing of the Political Parties Amendment Bill that brought this act into life, this is allowed. So there's no problem. The issue that people are bringing up saying Azimio does not have members, individual members in the National Assembly or in Senate is null and void. Why? Because the Political Parties Act allows for Azimio Coalition Party to have either individual members or members through the constituent parties. It allows the coalition party to choose. You can either have your member parties fielding candidates, or you can have candidates on Azimio. So in this case, as a coalition, they chose, in their wisdom, to have only the presidential candidate running as an Azimio candidate, and the rest of the electoral levels under the constituent parties. This is still allowed legally. And even the parties that are, claiming to have moved on, it is their right, of course, to have political association. But when you have a legally binding document and agreement, you can't just wake up, go to Karen, take photos, and then think that means now you've changed.
But then what supersedes the other? Is it the pre-election agreement or the post-election agreements that we're seeing these other parties get into?
No, the pre-election agreement stands, and legally there's a way. There are provisions, I think it's Article 22 or something like that, of the Azimio Coalition Agreement that was deposited with the custodian of these things, which is the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. So there are stipulations about how you can exit and how you can join. And I think for the Azimio coalition, it says you have to give a notice of like 3 months. So if you want to leave, follow the law. It's very simple. No one is yoking you without you wanting to be there. Anybody who wants to leave is free to leave, as long as you follow, the regulations and the law that is set in place. So until now, what I know and what is clear cut is that the Azimio coalition has majority in the National Assembly.
All right, Asaska. I mean, I think for now we'll just have to sort of wait for Wetangula to make that decision because it seems we cannot agree really on that issue.
The numbers still count.
Okay.
I agree with you, Zainab, on that point. But just before I give my opinion on the majority question.
Correct.
When I scanned through the newspapers, I was really looking into seeing anything about the drought in northern Kenya, the acute malnutrition in Mandera, and sadly there is none.
Wow. Right.
So that is something. So and definitely we've seen the President Ruto and the DP Gachagua having had meetings with our development partners, with our governors and other leaders, trying to see how best they can handle this emergency. And it's a shame that seeing young kids who can barely survive this drought this time around. And remember, Zainab, this is the 4th consecutive season that rain has failed, particularly in the Greater Horn of Africa and northern Kenya and under 23 ASAL counties that we have. And I remember that drought has become very, very frequent, allowing less time for recovery. Basically, we've been having drought back to back because of the rain failure. And remember, the ability for the government of Kenya and other development partners have been basically focused in terms of saving lives with their short-term interventions of food and non-food, distribution of food and non-food items. And I feel like this should be taken seriously. This intervention should be scaled up. And it should not just be about short-term interventions, but the Kenyan government and other development partners, in partnership with our leaders in the 23 ASAL counties, should, I think, focus more into long-term approaches in responding to the drought, because this is something that is very predictive. You know, we have our early warning reports by NDMA that are quite timely. They come way ahead of time, but we never act till we lose livestock. I mean, look at our deserts in northern Kenya. They're all filled up with carcasses of animals. It's a very, very sad image, Zainab, and I was saddened that it never made it on news headlines this morning.
But maybe just to come to our defense, especially on the media, is we've extensively covered this issue, especially from the past 2 weeks. I think if you watched or you read the newspaper last week, there was a complete like 6-7 pages of the issue of the drought. Maybe today it might have missed, but
the Mandera one,
have
particularly the under 5's acute malnutrition in Mandera must have been should have been highlighted today, because it's such a sad situation to look at those kids who. But
please do watch the news. We always have one of our reports will always touch on the issue of the drought within, especially the ASALs.
And also the killings in Kargi, in my constituency on Tuesday night.
Saska.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the majority question.
Yes.
As my colleague here has mentioned, yes, it's a straightforward answer based on Article 108. But remember, it's not just about, yes, it's about numbers. But also remember, there are a lot of defections moving from Azimio coalition back into KK. A couple parties have defected, and I think this does not bring a straightforward balance in terms of numbers. And I think for Speaker Wetangula this afternoon, he'll have to look into the law. You know, he'll have to look at the standing orders. He has to look at the pre- and post-election agreements that have been placed with the ORPP, and also. Remember, the Political Parties Amendment Act of 2021 has really, blocked a lot of, runaway parties who just jump from one ship to the other. So I think it's not easy. Yes, it looks straightforward, but it's not easy. Yes, it will need a lot of wisdom from the Speaker, but I expect him to be fair and just and give a very favorable decision this afternoon.
The Member of Parliament, Kimani Ichung'wah, in fact, yesterday said, if I was to quote him from a story here, saying that the question before the Speaker is to determine which is the largest party of coalition, and the party must be a parliamentary party. So he's asking, is Azimio a parliamentary party? That's the question he's asking. And then you had Ugunja, Member of Parliament, Opiyo Wandayi, saying and dismissing the argument, saying the election law as amended recognizes Azimio as both a political party and as a coalition. So I think this is where the bone of contention is.
But that really was what the amendment was about. It was about having your cake and eating it. And I remember at that time, a lot of noise was made. We may not have liked it. We may not have been in agreement with it. But I think even the director of political parties, really addressed herself to this and said it is custom made for Kenya. And she kept saying this is made in Kenya for Kenyans, you know. So it is a party, but at the same time, it's a coalition of parties, you know. Before, you could only be either or. Now, you can be both, which is what Azimio is. So we would be dishonest, you know, we would be rubbishing the amendments to the Political Parties Act if we decided that we still want to be governed by what the law was pre-amendment. It was amendments in April. No, February. Yeah. So the amendment essentially ensured that we have our cake and we are eating it. You can be a party and you can be a coalition at the same time, which is why they ran with, they had only the presidential candidate as a party, but within the coalition and as a coalition, they had candidates in their parties. And I think that's why they're struggling to explain that it's the membership is corporate. You know, you do not come as an individual. It actually allows for corporate.
Yeah.
You know, we may not agree with it. We may not. But it is the law.
Okay, let's see.
It is what we passed. But
I'm trying to get the act in just a moment.
Yeah, but I also wanted to say something about
right, and
what
then
Saska has said. I think in addressing issues that you understand, I would have been happy if Duale were tasked, for example, to run a ministry where ASAL areas fall, you know, because he comes from here, he would have pushed the agenda really passionately because he understands, he's represented his people in this area for a long time and understands the challenges. I remember when the NAC government, when Ngilu was, for lack of a better expression, insulted with the Ministry of Water because in Kitui there is a water shortage. And she really delivered, you know. At that time, she made sure you would never hear stories about lack of water. I really wish towards addressing the issues in Northeastern that it was given to somebody from that region to help understand. Because I think another thing that goes unreported is majority of us eat meat. Most of our meat comes from there. Yet we don't invest in ensuring that, you know, farming, livestock farming is taken care of. Whenever we talk of farming, we talk of maize, rice, wheat. Yet, livestock farming is also a type of farming. And a majority of us actually take meat.
All right. I think I'm going to invite you next time for the next conversation. We should be looking at the issue of how we can help the people who are actually going through so much within those parts of the country and perhaps really need this conversation.
Thank you.
Correct.
I want to chime in on this issue of the amendment of the Political Party Act. And like she said, it is an attempt of having your cake and eating it.
A successful one.
Not a successful. If it was a
They're trying to be
one,
successful.
It would have been, we wouldn't be arguing on who's the majority. If it was also successful, perhaps their presidential candidate would have won, because it was supposed to actually be an instrument that brings together so many parties in a way that they would ensure that they get the presidency. So it was a total fail. Now my question is, when you're saying that we have to follow that act as how they are actually trying to explain it, if indeed Azimio is a political party and should be treated as such, and the members, it's like a corporate party, and the members then are political parties that join in, and so now when we are looking at Azimio, we should look at it as a coalition but also a political party. How come they did not, or IEBC did not apply the same principle, for instance, when they were nominating, when they were submitting their lists of nominees, either for the National Assembly or for the Senate, for instance? If they want to have their cake and eat it, then even the lists of who they wanted to nominate should have come from the political party, in a sense that all this, but then they gave lists under ODM, they gave lists under White
Because the law allows it.
So you know what this is? This is a situation where, just as BBI was trying to be pushed as a political instrument to ensure that former Prime Minister Raila Odinga gets into office, and that flopped, this was also another hasty attempt to, like she said, have your cake and eat it. And actually to an extent where, if you remember, they had really not thought about having numbers and controlling National Assembly and Senate. So when they finally realized, oh my goodness, this is not going to work, they started this thing about zoning. And zoning really messed them because they realized the only way to try and get numbers within the smaller membership, that is the political parties, ODM, Jubilee, and who, the only way was to sit down and say, okay, this zone is for Jubilee, this zone is for ODM, because as a coalition political party, they were essentially competing with themselves. And by that competing with themselves, they were shooting themselves down by ensuring that they don't get majority numbers. So when you look at the legislation, and this is the most unfortunate thing, and I'm glad that I happen to serve in the Senate, because the most unfortunate thing is that when people legislate for purposes of curing a problem that's now, they don't really think about, like, how is this thing actually going to play out in the future? How is this thing going to play out when we, you know, like, fast forward, we are out of campaign, and for instance, even if Raila Odinga had actually won this election, in the Senate, we have the numbers just by virtue of being a single party UDA. We have the numbers. If you're going to look at the single parties, even if Azimio had actually won, their presidential candidate had won, and you went down to looking now at the numbers of the others, it would have been a total disaster, because you'd have a situation where you have the opposition, you know, potentially controlling government business. So I think what happened is, number one, our legislators were too drunk with power, because at that time ilikuwa ya kifua, na sisi ndio, na nini, and they just were like, okay, we just need to find a way where Raila can be with us, but not with us, where we can be with him, but not with him. So let us come with a coalition political party amendment act, which was quickly pushed to the House, and nothing was really thought through. And to an extent, now we are going into the part where we are going to give funds to political parties. You will see them fighting. You will see them fighting. Where is this money going? Will it go to Azimio, the political party? Will we give a percentage to ODM? Will we
The thing is,
it's
Gloria,
about to be,
all these things,
okay,
it's about,
are
allow me to finish.
Right.
It's about to be a serious mess, because at that point, it was really just about fielding Raila Odinga without having to remove him from ODM, but having to have him as part of Jubilee. So they created a law that cannot sustain itself. So even if the ruling comes that they are majority, right? Assuming this afternoon that the speaker rules that, you know, okay, fine, Azimio is on paper majority, and therefore we give them majority. And then in the next, is it 30 days or so, those political parties that now have signed a election agreement with Kenya Kwanza move. So then what will happen? We will have a motion again on the floor, because it will be like,
we will cross that bridge
no,
when we get
so
there.
they never really thought about it.
But as
hear
of
from
now,
her. Okay, let's hear. Yes, Asaska then.
I think we need to remember, since the return of the multi-party elections in Kenya, once the president is sworn in, it's the first order of the business of the day for you to ensure that you have a grip of influence on House leadership in Parliament. This means election of the speakers, deputy speaker, majority leaders, chief whips, and the chair of the various House committees, because this is very important for you to move on in implementing your political manifesto, because otherwise you'll be a lame duck. How are you gonna move on implementing your agenda? A point in mind is the Hustler 50 billion fund. This needs to be legislated, and laws and framework passed in Parliament, in National Assembly. So I think if you look at President Ruto's move, once he was sworn in, you know, he quickly had his party leadership, party meeting in Naivasha to be able to, you know, see how to go with the speakership position. And as of now, the Kenya Kwanza has House Speaker position both in the National Assembly and in the Senate. And I think this gives them strength, even in picking the majority, the leadership House, majority leader, chief whip, and also the chair of the various
positions.
In the Parliament committees. So I think they do have an upper hand if you look at it. And let's remember that yes, we have the post and pre-election party agreements with various parties, both in KK and Azimio. But I would like to emphasize the fact that individual politicians do have constitutional freedom of association. You know, let's not forget that part. I think that's where the juice is in this debate. That yes, I can move away as an individual from, for example, UDM, back from Azimio back to Kenya Kwanza, because I think that's my constitutional right in that aspect. As much as yes, they have an agreement, that they've placed with the ORPP. But I mean, these political parts, we all know this is all about how much rewards you can get from government. You know,
that's why
this is not based on ideologies or policies.
Okay, Vivian.
So the thing is, just to continue from where Aska has left. Yes, you do have a right of political association. But as with every right that we are granted in the Constitution, you cannot break other laws just so that your rights are met. So yes, you can associate with anyone you want politically, but let's follow the law. So even if you want to move from Azimio to Kenya Kwanza or be unaffiliated, you can do it. Nobody's stopping you, but do it within the confines of the law. Now,
that law should be declared unconstitutional because it actually breaches on the rights. Yeah, because the law is breaching on the rights.
What Gloria said.
It should be declared unconstitutional.
Touching on what Gloria said, all those issues that she raised about the coalition, not being, being a mess and all that. All these things are stipulated, how the nominations were done, into parliament, in the various houses of parliament. It's stipulated in the political parties' regulations. So there's no, people are not, it's not guesswork. It's not picky, ponky.
It is guesswork.
It is not. There are regulations that are clear, that are governing this. And that's why it was possible for the constituent parties to present their respective party lists for both Senate and the National Assembly. So please, Gloria, go and read the political
No, it's not about going to read the political party. Let me tell you
what, you will find all that there.
I'll go a step further. Just like we went,
and also the Political Parties Act.
Just like I petition
it will help you a lot.
We are going to petition because you cannot
you
create a law.
Had your moment.
You can't create a law that actually goes against the rights, the Bills of Rights, and this law actually goes against the Bills of Rights of association.
Okay.
So
it doesn't go against anybody's right of association.
In like a month.
Just follow.
Okay, let her finish her remarks.
Zainab,
okay.
When the time lapses, there's clear stipulations about how to exit the coalition and how to join. So anybody who wants to exit, nobody is stopping you. There's no law stopping you from exiting.
But there is.
Just follow the guidelines that are given and leave.
Actually a law.
Are you going to force me
if
I don't want to stay?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
No, we are not going to force you, but until you follow the law and the process
so for instance,
that allows you to leave. Just the same way joining is a legal process.
No. For instance,
exiting is also a legal process. Because we are saying we are led and guided by the rule of law. Let us follow the rule of law.
Can I just chime in?
As I finish, I expect that the speaker, as he gives his ruling today, will be impartial. Even though we know very well he's a beneficiary of Kenya Kwanza, I'm really hoping that he will, take his oath seriously to uphold and defend the Constitution and be impartial in his ruling.
Okay.
Kindly allow me to say, Senator Ali Roba stood in the Senate and said that he chooses to associate himself with Kenya Kwanza. And that's why he even sits in the side of majority. When you say there is no law stopping you from associating, you are actually also saying, but yes, there is a law stopping you from associating.
No,
and that's why I am
saying there's a legal process to exiting the coalition agreement.
There is a law that was created.
He can associate with anybody he wants to associate.
I allowed you.
But there's a legal process you need to follow to exit the coalition.
You're not allowing me.
That is what I'm saying.
You can shout all you want to shout.
I'm not shouting.
They shouted
so
about...
I'm
not shouting.
Okay,
I
so
have not contributed. They shouted about degrees being forcefully put down on people who want to seek elective posts. And they could shout all they wanted to shout. But that piece of legislation in Section 22 actually went against the Bills of Rights and was declared and will continue being unconstitutional. When you say that you can associate, but wait first, the amendment says that as much as you want to associate, you must legally exit. You are actually infringing on the Bills of Rights of Association. So technically what happened, this law was rushed, it was put to the House, they passed it for whatever reason, but come to think of it, and when you analyze it, when you analyze this amendment, when you analyze this amendment of actually the Political Parties Act, it is very unconstitutional in a sense that you have a senator standing in the house saying,
Gloria, it's all
I
about the
choose
act.
to
It's about
associate
the coalition
30
agreement.
seconds, so we do have just.
And
I
the
want to give you
coalition
so that
agreement,
we
not the
also
act.
hear from Saska and
act.
Chieng, who've been very quiet. So 30 seconds each. We've run out of time.
Okay.
And like not even one. I'm serious. 30 seconds. I'm going to start. Okay, let me give Chieng and then Saska because they have not spoken.
As they were talking,
Right.
I was just thinking of a marriage that has gone bad and you want out. You know, you cannot go and get married to another person until divorce is finalized.
Yeah.
But
you can
have
separate.
you do not have to live with the
person.
Yeah. You know, and I think this is what Ali Roba did. He has moved out of the house. But he cannot get married to Kenya Kwanza because we are
Until
still
this
married.
one is-
Until our divorce is finalized,
Yeah.
he cannot get into another marriage.
Absolutely.
I think for me it is important to uphold the rule of law. Right is right whether you agree with it
Thank
or
you
not.
so much, Achieng.
Right is right whether you like it or not. I would be happy if,
I'll
because
respond
today
to it.
Azimio has a majority, tomorrow Azimio is likely not to have a majority. So as long as Azimio has a majority, let Azimio be.
Yeah.
When Azimio ceases to have a majority,
Okay.
let the law take its course,
course.
and then we have,
Exactly.
you know, the person with the majority taking charge.
Exactly.
Then only then can you stand and say,
All
I
right.
uphold the rule of the law, I defend the constitution.
All right.
And then on the change of to the law, Political Parties Act, Kriegler gave very clear recommendations that it is best not to amend laws around elections, at least in a year, you know, in less than a year to an election. And maybe, Gloria, it is a good thing we have you today here as a legislator. Please, do not make changes in 2026 from Nauko October 2026, because this is where we end up.
I thought you were going to say
Saska.
I totally agree with you on your last statement. Because remember, the Political Parties Amendment Act of 2021 was hurriedly brought to the House and you know, passed, and it brought about a lot of ambiguity in determination of who has the majority in Parliament. And I think sometimes it's the members of Parliament to blame themselves, because I think if they took time and make sure that these amendments are done, these amendments are clear, these statements are very clear, how well can we determine and marry to the Article 108, I think we'll not be here today debating this for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Saska. One sentence, like literally one sentence to Vivian.
Okay, Sawa. Mine is not even going to be on that. My last words are just to thank the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, for the dual carriageway connecting Lang'ata and Kilimani. As people of Lang'ata environs, we are very happy. It saves us a lot of traffic, together, of course, with the pedestrian bridges coming up that have been completed at Nyayo Stadium, and the Uhuru Gardens, and the one coming up at the Lang'ata Barracks. Tumefurahi na tunashukuru sana.
Thank you. Gloria.
I think my statement would be that you could be married.
That looks like a paragraph, but okay.
You could be married. You could be married to a killer, and there's nothing in the law that will stop you from fleeing that marriage. That is one thing that you have to understand. No one will stand at the door and tell you, by the way, uko na certificate ka hapo. No, because you have a right to life. You have a right to protect that life, and so that issue of marriages here and there doesn't apply. And also to say that. I'm glad that ODM, not Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza doesn't exist. I mean, not Azimio.
Yes, Kenya Kwanza doesn't exist. Thank you.
It was a slip of the tongue.
It was a slip of the tongue. But you know, they are practicing the opposition. I'm glad that Azimio and ODM are now back to life. They have recovered. And they are now actually, you know, they are doing the work of opposition.
Gloria,
all right, thank you. And according to the Constitution, according to the Constitution, we have run completely out of time.
Good job.
Looking at Article 108, certainly the different political outfits are looking at the interpretations quite differently. And of course, the Article 108 stipulates how the majority side is determined. But that will be determined today, and that ruling will be made by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, at 2:30 when the House resumes for deliberations. We'll be, in fact, airing that live, I believe, and we'll be giving you more details of the same if we do not air that live, but we'll get you all the details in just a moment, later in the afternoon, not in a moment. Well, Gloria Uroba, nominated Senator, Saska Labarakwe, public policy expert, Chieng Osogo, governance and political analyst, and Vivienne Ta, political and governance analyst as well. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming in this morning. It's been great to have you, and that's all we had lined up for you on M Live. Your World is coming in up in just a moment with Winnie Lubembe. Stay tuned for that. My name is Zainab Ismail. Good morning. Good day.